local planning committee for this workshop. And I want to welcome all of you for coming today. We feel like this is a very timely topic. So many of our families are affected by dementia and Alzheimer's, and so we are delighted that the Alzheimer's Association and UT Health Science Center was able to bring this out to us today, and we appreciate you being here. What I would like to do, what I'd like to do is introduce to you the rest of our local planning committee. I'll let Maxine introduce the rest of the people. But we had Vicki Contreras, who is with the CINIS dialysis unit. Jaime Ortiz, who's with Valverde Regional Medical Center with the regional, geriatric program. Christina Nass, who's not here today. Then we have Samantha Santiago. I'm saying it wrong, I know I am, with Country Place Living. You have to rush out, okay. And so I appreciate all the help you've given us to do that. There's a couple, let's see if, one other person from Eagle Pass with AHAC, and that's Rosemary Davis. She's also been a big help. She's actually the one who's furnished the goodie bags and the information that you have inside your bags. A couple of things before I turn it over. For you all that are not familiar with the Civic Center, there are two restrooms. There's one on this side. Just go down the hallway all the way to the end. And if you're trying to get your steps in, you can go all the way down to the other end of the Civic Center and use the restrooms down there. I'm always counting my steps, so that's a good way to do that. Everyone should have a copy of the agenda there. So what I'm going to do now is turn this over to Joe Zapata, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patty. Thank you. Everybody hear me? Okay, perfect. All right. As I said, my name is Joe Zapata. I'm from the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio. Myself with Mark Johnson, who's going to be videotaping this conference. We're probably here to present this very important Alzheimer's conference to your community. We're very proud to be here. And just thank you so much for the support that this. And what I'm going to do primarily is supplying the continuing education credits. Now, who here is going to want to receive CEUs? Oh, that's great. That's awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over the paperwork so you guys can have access to the CEUs that I'm going to be providing. So in your folder, you should have the statement of attendance form. It's a 4-page form, table, and the first page shows you what credits you're receiving and how much. The second page is what I will need from you today. You will sign how many credits you are going to accumulate today, and the bottom you're going to check off which one you want. And of course, you need a signature, name clearly, and your email address. I need an email address because what I'll do at the end of the conference, I will send you an online link to fill out the evaluation form. The moment you finish the evaluation form, I'll be notified of that, and then I will send you a certificate online for you to print. So everything's online now. Yes, ma'am.
Do you want our license number? I see American Psychological Assistant, maybe an social worker. Do you want my name?
No, I need a license number only for those seeking APA credits. And anything besides APA, I do not need a license for that. Page after that shows you the learning objectives and of course the faculty we speak today and the program and committee. Other important paperwork is the conference evaluation provided by the Alzheimer's Association. Of course, it's always great to know what kind of feedback we're getting, how we're doing, so we can improve our conferences for the next time we come to a South Texas town like Del Rio. Also included is the Alzheimer's State of Services, a pamphlet, one-page sheet back-to-back about history of the Alzheimer's Association. On the other side, there is a participant profile form. It is a one-page back-to-back demographic profile form that is voluntary for you to fill out. What we do with this is that we turn in this kind of information to the government, which in turn gives us grant money to provide free conferences to areas that need education, dealing with Alzheimer's and geriatric education. So again, it's completely voluntary. People in the past have attended conferences like this and turned in this information, which in turn gives grant money to provide you this kind of educational facilities to bring to you. So if you could if you could return the favor and do that for our future conferences for those who might attend, that would be great. And if you have any questions regarding CEUs, I'll be here all day to answer those questions pertaining to any kind of CEU. So if any questions, I'll be up and around all over the place. And I think that's about it as far as CEUs.
That's our demographic.
Okay. Okay. Next thing we'll go over program form. And if anybody has any questions regarding CEUs right now, so we get that. Okay, awesome. Well, I have to introduce Maxine. She's with the Alzheimer's Association. And again, thank you so much for having us, and we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you.
Well, good morning again. My name is Ms.Ginny. I do work with the Alzheimer's Association. We want to thank you for coming. Our planning committee, you guys have been fabulous. I know that we were all busy and having to deal with the different schedules, but you pulled through with it, and we really appreciate your support today. If you have been through our tables, I hope you picked up one of these. We're hoping that you sign up and become an advocate. Doesn't matter where you stand in your politics. We all need to urge our politicians to sign legislation that benefits, Alzheimer's research, education and support. So please sign that up, and we will definitely pick it up from you. Plus, we'll be using these cards as our raffle for today. We have some very good gifts from the Alzheimer's Association. They're not, but they're at our table. If not, we'll pass them out to everybody that is in attendance. In your packets, the one form that Joe did not go over, which is our signing form, education signing form. That is the one specific to the Alzheimer's Association. And again, it's also demographics, trying to capture who are we presenting to and how can we then in turn that into more funding for our programs throughout our region. So we would appreciate that information back as well. Well, Jenny will be presenting this morning. We're going to have a short delay. We're going to give maybe 5 more minutes before we actually start. Mark?
I don't know, there's lots they have to do in this building for us to get going.
Okay, so in the meantime, we'll wait for other people to come in and register in the morning. We'll be available for any questions that you may have, and thank you for coming. We'll be around. Hopefully, you'll enjoy the program today. We have great speakers coming in, including Jenny, our fearless leader at Alzheimer's Association, and then we'll have Dr. Iván Lozano this afternoon, and I think you're going to just want for her to stay on forever and speak longer and longer. So thank you for coming.
As hard as we can, and basically we're waiting for the internet to come on in this room so that the PowerPoint that's on our computer will link up with that and show on that. So, I can tell you I am the least computer literate person in our office, so thank heavens we have Mark and Joe with us today, who are from the GEC, who you heard from earlier. Just can't thank them enough for all of their help, and I know that as soon as they get it going, it'll join me. So in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and start, PowerPoint or no, and just talk about the basics of Alzheimer's disease, and then they'll sort of catch up to me. I do apologize that I don't have handouts of this, but hopefully you can sort of go along with me for a little bit. I'm Jenny Funk, and I work at the Alzheimer's Association, and we are very, very thrilled to be in your community today and yesterday. And from here on out, we most definitely want to make sure that by the end of today, not only will you be tired, exhausted, hopefully full from all of the incredible food that we have, and overloaded with information and resources, because that's really one of the main reasons for doing these types of classes and education, is to help link people who are touched by Alzheimer's disease with resources that are out there that you may not know about. We meet people every day who unfortunately have lost a loved one to Alzheimer's, and we always ask, did you get help through the association? Did you learn about resources? And it's generally a no. So we really appreciate this opportunity to be here with you and to let you know that you are most definitely part of our chapter territory, and all of you are very important, and we want to help as much as possible. So, and very much have had we're just really glad to be here with you and in your community. So I'm going to go through basics of really kind of what's normal aging, because we still continue to hear it a lot. Oh, it's just, you know, she just has a little bit of dementia, or we even hear when and no offense against doctors, but we continue to have families that will call our helpline that will say, you know, we're concerned about our family member. We went to the doctor, and the doctor just kind of does a little pat of, well, it's just, you know, it's nothing, or it's just a little bit of dementia. And that's actually, that's not a true statement. You either have it or you don't. So, during this, once we do hopefully get the PowerPoint going, there are video clips that we've really never had before. So one of the significant differences, as you guys know, between Alzheimer's disease and other diseases is that a lot of times, I'll just use cancer as an example, an individual with cancer can most times be their own advocate and speak up and let people know what they need and what kind of support they need, etc. The people with Alzheimer's disease reach a point in the progression where they no longer have that ability. And in the last couple of years, I would say maybe the last 5, individuals with Alzheimer's disease in earlier stages have started speaking up for them on behalf of themselves and saying, you know what, you focused heavily on taking care of the caregiver, it's so important, but we need our own support services as well. And we know that the more people who do that, the more awareness will be raised, the more stigma of this disease will go down, and it will help everyone touched by this disease. Just like what happened with breast cancer. When you think about, it wasn't all that long ago in years when breast cancer, that was a no-no taboo subject. You just didn't talk about that. And now look at it. It's phenomenal, and death rates have decreased because of the amount of awareness and money and research. It's a lot better than it has been in the past. And we need the same thing to happen with Alzheimer's disease. So to get back to my point, there are videos embedded in this PowerPoint of individuals who have Alzheimer's disease. And that's a fairly new thing for people to come forward and say, yes, I have Alzheimer's disease, and this is what it's like, and this is what I'm dealing with. And it's amazing to hear their perspective on it. So I do hope we'll be able to get to see that. The first clip, I'll just zip right by. It's Dr. Peterson, who is director of the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center at Mayo Clinic. And he's talking about medications and kind of where we are currently with the disease. So I'll skip right past that. So normal aging. Just pretend like this is up on the screen. Normal aging or typical brain-related changes. I'm sure all of us have made a comment, wow, I'm kind of concerned, you know, I just forgot that and wonder if that means I have Alzheimer's. Or it gets worse. We know that individuals still continue to joke about it, even though it's not funny. But there are actually age-related type of changes that do happen in the brain. We are all aware of changes that happen on the exterior as we age. Same thing's going on inside our bodies, and the brain does go through some normal, whatever normal is, normal, typical changes that can include a little bit of memory loss, of slowing down, of just changes similar to what the inside of the body is going through. So, for example, who makes a bad decision once in a while? Everyone, for sure. That is a typical age-related type of thing that can occur, but sometimes people worry about that. missing, well, this is kind of missing an occasional monthly payment. I hope there's not too many hands raised on that, but you know, missing a deadline, something like that, that is typical, that's normal. Forgetting which day it is and remembering later. I have to say, if I don't write it down, I have significant memory issues in that I have to keep a note on everything, and I do that. What day of the week is it? Okay, well, sort of based on, okay, Thursday's trash day, and so, or, you know, Friday, we get to be more casual and wear jeans, just that kind of, that's normal. We all go through that type of thing. Sometimes forgetting which word to use, forgetting names. We have worked with all of the volunteers in your community for a long time and have met people this morning, and I cannot remember their names. I wish we had name tags. That's a normal type of thing that will increase with age, typical. Losing things from time to time. Oh man, where did I lay that down? That type of thing. All of those changes, though, are not considered to be a problem. They just indicate that your brain is aging along with the rest of your body. So, the next slide, if we had it, would be Joyce, who has Alzheimer's disease, and she talks about her concern of some of the things she started noticing about herself, and she thought, you know, this doesn't seem to be normal. Something is off kilter. I'm doing things that I no longer used to be able to do, and I'm concerned about it. So hopefully we'll catch up with that. And the things that she noticed were not typical of advancing age. And you'll see she's also quite young. So with Alzheimer's disease and irreversible dementias, these types of things are not once in a while. One of our main campaigns that we started doing a couple years ago is Early Detection Matters. Know the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's disease. Well, I have worked at the association for 13 years. I can clearly remember we never used the term early detection of Alzheimer's disease. That was never, you hear that with other diseases and how important that is. We never linked that up with Alzheimer's disease because there is no cure, because there are actually no treatments to stop it in its tracks. So what would be the point of early detection? Well, there are lots and lots, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but we go through the 10 warning signs so that, and when we do that presentation, we point out, these are normal, typical age-related problems, sort of changes with the brain, and these are actual warning signs that there might be dementia happening. So then the next slide would actually be the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's disease, and I'll just go through these super fast. And they're not in order, for sure. Some of these come as a surprise to some people because you just don't think about that maybe how much vision and hearing can be affected. And most people think, quite a lot still think, that Alzheimer's disease and dementia is just losing your memory. You get forgetful, you forget things. But actually it affects every part of the brain. So the warning signs include not just memory loss, but a lot of other things. So memory loss that disrupts daily life, that's a lot different than forgetting a wonderful volunteer name or laying something down and then remembering later. This is significant memory loss where it's affecting how you go through daily life. Changes in planning or solving problems. Think about this. When you, hopefully, all of us brushed our teeth this morning, and that's a normal thing, we do that on autopilot. But if I were to ask you to write down all the steps in a planning process of what it takes to brush your teeth, there are a lot. First, you have to find the right room in the house to do that. You have to turn the water on, you have to get the right utensil, you have to put the right thing on it. That's where, we hear family members say, I came in the bathroom and they had a comb and they were trying to use that to brush their teeth. So a significant warning sign of just that, a disruption in the ability to plan out what seems like just a very normal daily activity. difficulty completing familiar tasks at home. That's the other significant thing about Alzheimer's and dementia. It means something different is happening that you used to be able to do regularly. So if you've never been the one that does the checkbook and suddenly you're asked to do it and it doesn't work very well, that's not a sign of dementia. If you've always been the one who has done it and suddenly things start to be missing, off balance, you don't know where money's going, that can be a warning sign that there's something more significant happening. Confusion with time or place. This is a significant warning sign. Again, who forgets what day it is? Sometimes I even write the wrong year on a check. Does anybody ever do that? Is that just me? Confusion with time or place as a warning sign of possibly a dementia symptom is confusion that, I know it's hard to think of this in South Texas, but in the winter, no longer cognitively understanding that you don't walk outside in your flip-flops and shorts, and having someone who does that. Or confusion with time where someone is speaking about 1954 as if it's happening right now. That is much more significant, and that is a warning sign. Trouble understanding visual images and spatial relationships. This has to do with vision. So in the normal, typical aging of the brain, cataracts, and getting cataracts does increase with age. But with Alzheimer's disease and dementia, there is also an effect of losing the ability to tell the difference between spatial relationships and where I am in relation to a chair. So you might see someone who, will sit down, and they sort of, and you're going, sit down, and they just, or maybe they don't hit it in the right way. That's a change in vision. Or I don't know if you can see on the floor, an individual with dementia as a warning sign may walk up and this is light and that's dark, and so that looks like a step down. That looks like a different level, so you'll see them go like this. Or sometimes in communities where for someone with dementia everything is a queue, so a door is a queue to go out the door. So sometimes they'll put those dark, like a dark black mat right in front of the door. So an individual might walk up to that and, I don't want to step into that, I'll turn around and go the other way. So that's a significant warning sign. New problems with language in words and in writing. Joyce, the woman on one of our videos who talks about having Alzheimer's disease, she was writing emails to her sister thinking everything was okay, and finally her sister said, we really need to talk. Your emails don't make any sense. And they spoke about it together, and she didn't even realize that as she was writing, things were significantly changing, and she was writing out words and sentences that didn't make any sense. That was a warning sign for sure. Language, I'll talk a lot about how Alzheimer's disease and other dementias not only affect that part of our brain that holds our long-term and short-term memory, but the part that holds communication, when we speak, it gets affected majorly. I will say that I am now going through this with my parent, and I will say that my mom has the ability to very much remember something pretty sharply from last week that I wish that she would forget, but she remembers that she can't find the car keys, which she doesn't know that I have, but her language is very affected. So it's almost as if that part is much more affected than short-term memory. So it's different for every person. Misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. So if you make a joke or you make a comment about, oh gosh, I must have Alzheimer's disease. Well, I am not a doctor, and please don't quote me on this, but the ability to retrace your steps, someone with Alzheimer's disease and dementias, they no longer have that ability. So if you go home and you lay something down, and you can't figure out what it is, but then, the dog needs to go out, you need to use the restroom, the phone's ringing, all those things happen, But if you can go sit down undistracted and go back through your brain, okay, I came in and then I did this and then I went, oh, that's weird. Then I did this and then I let the dog out and then I did, that's where I threw the bag in there and that's where it is. All that retracing is not something that someone with Alzheimer's can do. So if you have the ability to retrace your steps, you are okay. Again, don't quote me on that, but that really is one of those things that they look for, the ability to retrace your steps. If your brain can do that, you don't have dementia. Okay, decreased or poor judgment. So again, I hope I get to show you a picture of the brain, but right here in the front of our brain is called the frontotemporal area, and it's the area that holds when we make decisions, good or bad, when we make judgments, good or bad. Again, I think about when people talk about, we found our neighbor walking with no clothes outside. That is a judgment, a bad decision and a bad judgment, and someone would no way otherwise do, but having that part of the brain affected, that's a warning sign. That's something that is a significantly bad decision. Or when individuals start giving away loads of money over, someone calls and says, this is what I need your help, give me your credit card, and they do it. Well, we know that's a bad judgment. If you start seeing things like that, it's a warning sign. Withdrawal from work, social life, family. Started noticing this. We love to go out and eat. Generally, going out to a restaurant, it's not only for the great food, but also to be amongst our family and do something fun. And it started with, no, I don't want to do that. Oh, you're kidding. No. Well, do you want me to just bring it in? Yes. Okay, well that was a significant withdrawal. Withdrawing from things that you love to do. Well, when you think about all these other warning signs, if these are occurring, this one makes sense that you would pull back. I think of Nancy in our office. She's our expert. She talks about how someone with Alzheimer's disease, their world gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And actually that's better for them because, particularly thinking about the atmosphere of the restaurant, too much noise, too many decisions, a menu, oh my gosh. It's amazing to me now that when we go somewhere, my mom loves movies, but I still make the mistake, and I know not to do this, but let's go to Luby's and put her out in front of all that, and it's just too overwhelming. Whereas if I were to just say, do you want the fried fish or the fried chicken? That would be better. So the withdrawal of too much going on, and also individuals in early stages of the disease talk about they are aware that something is happening and that people may very well be treating them differently. So you want to go to your regular card game? No. No. Well, why? Well, because they get mad at me. Well, okay. Well, if you no longer have the ability to play that game like you used to, other people may very well think you're cheating, or it's easy, unfortunately, to get frustrated with someone who is losing some of their cognitive ability. And so the withdrawal is if you see someone who's withdrawing, pay attention because that can be a very significant warning sign. Also, depression. Depression runs high among individuals with dementia. And a little bit later, I'll totally run out of time, we'll talk about how depression actually is one of those things that causes dementia symptoms. So sometimes it's actually difficult to tell if the dementia is caused by Alzheimer's disease or depression. But I'll talk about that later. And then last but not least, number 10, which again, these aren't in order, but changes in personality and mood. So in normal, typical, who has a bad day? I mean, we have bad days. That's normal. A warning sign is when someone has a big catastrophic reaction to something that you think, that wasn't, I didn't say anything that was that big of a deal. I didn't I didn't do anything. What was that? Whereas it's, we're talking significant mood swings. Not everyone goes through this. We have family members who say, personality changes? None. She was the sweetest woman her whole life, and she still is. Some individuals have significant personality changes. That can also depend on what kind of dementia it is. Remember when I talked about frontotemporal? Well, that type of dementia is otherwise known as Pick's disease. Individuals who have Pick's disease, dementia, really struggle with significant, because again, that's about no longer being able to make good decisions and good judgments. And so that personality change can be very significant. But as a warning sign, those are things to watch for, significant mood changes and personality changes. But one thing I always think of is cussing. Well, I can't say that for my mom because she's always cussed. But we do have a lot of people who say, I just don't understand. My grandfather, that was not him. He did not use that kind of language, and now he is. And that's a significant change of what's happening in the brain to someone who would never otherwise speak like that. And cussing, yes, I've never had my mom cuss at me, but I have experienced that now, and I know I have to remind myself, wow, that is a disease. That is not how my mom would speak to me. So those are our 10 warning signs. Flipping forward, and I know I'll just keep going, and I'm so sorry that that you're not seeing all this on screen, but I also can, if anyone wants copies of different presentations today or this one, we can email it, we can mail it to you, whatever we can do. So just talking a little bit about dementia and Alzheimer's, and I know we have a great speaker that's coming up next, and I hope to not be overlapping, but one of the most commonly asked questions that we get is, what's dementia? Or what's Alzheimer's? Or we'll have family members who come into our office, or they call on our helpline and say, well, our grandmother was just diagnosed with dementia. And we'll say, okay. More specifically, do you know which one? Well, not Alzheimer's, and just dementia. Well, dementia is actually not a medical term, and it's not a medical diagnosis. The definition of dementia is cognitive decline, severe enough to interfere with daily life. Okay, who feels like you have cognitive decline sometimes? Right, when we're super tired, or super overwhelmed, or super stressed, we have cognitive decline, but that's not dementia. Dementia means every day, it's progressive, and it's interfering with your daily life. It's causing problems with that. Another way of looking at it as a broad umbrella term is ice cream. I've actually heard a neurologist explain that, ice cream is a broad umbrella term. If you came up and said, and I was working at a candy store or something, you said, I'd like to order some ice cream, I'd have to go, well, great, I have 57 flavors here. Which one do you want? Same thing with dementia. There are more than 100 different types of causes of dementia out there. It just so happens that Alzheimer's disease really takes up at least 50 to 70% of all the dementia symptoms that occur as the cause of dementia symptoms. So here's ice cream, or the umbrella term. We think of the long handle that comes down from the umbrella as Alzheimer's disease, because it is the disease that causes the most dementia. But underneath that umbrella, Parkinson's disease causes dementia, Pick's disease, and vascular. I'll go through some more of those, but just keeping that in mind. And under that umbrella term, there are reversible dementias and irreversible dementias. So that's another whopping major reason for why would you want early detection of Alzheimer's? Why would you want to know as soon as possible because you can't do anything? Well, actually, because there are things that cause dementia that are reversible, that are not Alzheimer's disease. So getting that checked out, if it's thyroid problems can cause dementia. Depression can cause dementia. Vitamin B12 can cause dementia. all of that is something that needs to, I'm sort of skipping ahead here, but that's why it's so important to be able to see a doctor who can really determine what's causing it, because it may not be Alzheimer's disease. Let's see. What causes dementia and whether it can be reversed or not has everything to do with what type of dementia it is. So, and dementia is not just memory loss, but our ability to think, to make decisions, to, let's see, what other kinds of examples? Just everything, you know, we don't often think about our brain as an organ. We hear all the time about, well, the heart as an organ is so important and this is what you have to do to take care of it. Well, the brain in our body is an organ and it's very important to take care of it also. And when individuals show these types of symptoms, it's very, very important to find out what is happening, and is it something that's happening in the brain, or is it some other medical condition that might actually be happening? If it's irreversible, then you will see a progression of dementia symptoms where they continue to get more difficult and worse over time. A gradual loss of skills and abilities. That's why some people say, well, he was diagnosed in 2001, but when we really think about it, and now that we know the symptoms, I think it was probably 5 years before that where we started noticing things, but they were just kind of subtle. And again, we just thought it was normal, you know, it was just him being him. So that's a common thing that happens with difficulty of getting diagnosed as well. So a small percentage of dementias can be reversible. Adverse reactions to medications. We had a family who came in who told us about their loved one who was on 17 different medications. That's a lot. That would be the first thing to go, okay, is there one doctor or are there 5 doctors coordinating that? And is it possible that those medications are having an interaction that could be causing dementia symptoms? Infections. An older individual who has a urinary tract infection can look and have symptoms just like someone with Alzheimer's disease. So that's super important too. Then you can have someone like what we've been through who has dementia of some type and have a UTI, and then it just gets all out of it. But that's really important to check for, particularly if you see something where it's a significant change all of a sudden. It could be a urinary tract infection, which there are treatments for if it's treated and the symptoms stop. And it was not Alzheimer's disease. It was the infection that was causing it. Serious nutritional deficiencies like too little vitamin B12. There's an alcohol-related dementia. I used to work in an assisted living community, and we had a woman who hers was alcohol-related dementia. Looked very, very, very similar to Alzheimer's disease, but it was a different cause of her dementia symptoms. Dehydration can cause dementia. Again, Alzheimer's disease accounts for 60 to 80% of dementia symptoms over the age of 70, so it's very significant. So it's the most common one. We get asked, well, your organization, your nonprofit's called Alzheimer's Association. My loved one has Lewy body. No, it just means that our legal name is Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, Inc., Incorporated, blah, blah, blah. There's no way we could have that as our name. So that happens a lot of times, and I catch myself doing it too. I'll use Alzheimer's as the umbrella term, even though it's really not. It's just one form, one disease that causes dementia. Lesser prevalent dementias, vascular dementia comes in second. Although with Lewy body dementia, just out of curiosity, has anyone ever worked with someone who has Lewy body dementia? No. Pick's disease? Experience with someone with Pick's disease? Okay. Well, they're all bad, most certainly. But these are dementia symptoms. Mixed dementia. Now, scientists believe that there are a significant number of people who have mixed dementia, which means they have Alzheimer's disease and another form at the same time, as if it wasn't difficult enough. Okay, just to go through a couple of statistics. And this is not just an American disease, it's worldwide, but in America there are over 5 million people who have Alzheimer's disease. In the world, 35 million. It is significant, and we've used that number for many years, so we know that it's higher than that. So while I'm talking, someone will develop Alzheimer's disease every 67 seconds. That's how prevalent it is. 1 out of 9 people over the age of 65 have Alzheimer's disease, and it jumps up to at least 1 out of 3 over the age of 85. And Alzheimer's disease, the #1 risk factor is aging, which means everyone in this room, including myself, we are all at risk for developing Alzheimer's disease because there's only a few things we do not have control over, and that one is aging. I happen to think aging is fantastic. I love old people. I can say that because I older individuals are and Dr. Yvonne Lozano will talk later about ageism and how one reason why we don't get more attention with Alzheimer's disease is people still think, oh, it's just an older person's disease, which it is not. But age is the #1 risk factor, and it does increase significantly as we age, and we have 0 control over that, which means we're all at risk. But it's not a normal part of aging. You don't just get older and, oh, we're going to get Alzheimer's disease. It's not a normal part of aging. It is a brain disease. You will either get it or you won't. It's not just a little bit of dementia that happens. It is progressive and it is fatal. It is now the 6th leading cause of death in America. The brain, again, every organ is important, but the brain controls and tells the rest of our body everything that it does, including basic functions like eating and drinking and swallowing and breathing. And it's fatal because it reaches the point where the brain can no longer tell the body how to do those kind of things. Alzheimer's disease is again, in that if I were to show you a list of the top 10 killers, causes of death in America, it's #6. And on that list, it's the only disease that has no cure, no treatment, no prevention. So it's a biggie. It is significant, and I know that you all are concerned because that's why you're here today. But that is also why when we ask for you to help us with advocacy and different types of things, and to share your stories if you have been touched by Alzheimer's disease, so that, again, we can lower stigma, raise awareness, and get more funding for research studies so that we can find a cure. That's ultimately what we I don't want to jump off topic, but ultimately that's our goal, to find a cure for Alzheimer's disease, to find treatments to stop Alzheimer's disease if you get it, and to prevent Alzheimer's disease for those of us who do not have it. All those things don't exist as of yet. The next clip would have been Steve, who has Alzheimer's disease, who talks about the changes again that he saw in himself, and that early symptoms for him, he did have a hard time sort of understanding, well, is this normal or not normal? And he's young. He also points out that everyone who has Alzheimer's disease is different. There is a progression, there are stages. I've heard a neurologist describe it, where Alzheimer's disease, the progression is kind of like a slide on a playground. It goes like this, like this, like this, like this. Whereas vascular dementia, the second most common form of dementia, caused by mini strokes in the brain, its progression is more like a stair step. You're at this level cognitively functioning, and then boom, significant drop. And then levels out, levels out, that could stay that way for a long time, and then significant decline. So more like a stair step with vascular. That is one of the ways that physicians have to figure out the differences between the different kinds of dementias that could be happening. Next slide would have been great to show you because it actually shows in our brain, it's hard to even think about this, but there are 100 billion nerve cells. And they're firing off messages all the time. That's huge. And we can think about the connections between them. It's kind of like a factory where this does this job and then it passes it off to this and then this does this job, and that's how we walk, talk, eat, have memories, have emotions. All those things are happening in our brain right now. And Alzheimer's disease, what it does is destroys brain cells. And the problem is why we don't have a cure. One reason as of yet is it has not been figured out how to bring them back alive or reconnect the factory, the little factory that's going on in there. So that's very significant. Another, I wish I could show this, but we also have a picture of the brain where it shows different parts and what holds our ability to store a memory from today and turn it into a long-term memory, where our language is, where our decisions are, all those things. And Alzheimer's affects all of that. So it's not just about, oh, you lose your memory. It affects every part of the brain, which is why eventually as it progresses, an individual will need 24-hour total care because it's not just the memory part of the brain. It affects language, let's see, changes, as we talked about, changes in personality, judgment, movement, visual processing, hearing. Man, I talk to him and he just can't hear me. It's so frustrating. He won't answer me. I ask him the same question over and over, he won't answer me. That's a really significant sign to get hearing checked because it may be hearing loss or it may be the inability to process and understand the question, especially if you keep asking it to me repeatedly. I've learned this in books and working with people, but now that I'm going through this with my mom, I see it. If I ask her too many questions at once, she won't answer. And if I didn't know it, I would be like what happens very easily, get frustrated. Which one do you want? Can we go? Hurry up, I need, why can't you answer me? Well, she doesn't have that ability. That ability is lost. And it has to do with the dementia, not that she can't hear me. It's a significant cognitive issue. Let's see. Alzheimer's disease average can last between average 7 to 10 years. That's a long time. Individuals who have what's called younger onset Alzheimer's, which means they're younger than 65, it tends to progress much faster than someone who's 80 who gets Alzheimer's disease. We have some families who say, I don't understand. She lived to be 82 and then got Alzheimer's disease. Is that possible? Yes. The risk increased with age. But out of 5.5 million Americans who have Alzheimer's, at least 200,000, and it's estimated much higher than that, have younger onset Alzheimer's. So that means 40s, 50s, 60s. Right now we're working with a family where mom is 41 years old. I'm older than she is. And they have 3 young kids. And dad is just starting to realize, wow, all of the things that they have ahead and everything that the kids need. So it's more rare and less prevalent in younger individuals, numbers-wise, but it is not just an old person's disease. Increases with age, but not just an old person's disease. Length of time that an individual has the disease, it depends on if there are other types of medical conditions that happen. And so there's really no way, which is why we are advocates for hospice services, because hospice is a benefit. But hospice is difficult because a doctor has to be able to determine that an individual is within so many months of passing away. Well, with Alzheimer's disease, that's tough, because individuals can live for years in the end stages of Alzheimer's disease. So it's a difficult one, and we have family members say, you know, how much longer is this going to go on? We had a board member, her mom had it for 16 years. That is a long, long time. And there is no way of really determining how long. We leave that, all that stuff we leave up to the medical experts. Let's see. Okay, let's no longer talk about the videos.
Maybe at lunchtime, you can show some.
Right, exactly. Will you tell me when I'm almost? Thanks. I'm talking fast, but not fast enough. Okay, so we talked about age as a risk factor. Down syndrome. Individuals with Down syndrome are living longer, and they have a very high prevalence. I think it's actually over 90% of developing Alzheimer's disease if they live to a certain age. So, nationally, our organization is carrying up on some research studies on individuals with Down syndrome to try to determine why that is. Family history. Okay, two things we have no control over. The fact that we are aging. Yay, I'm thankful we are. It means we're still alive. I hope we all get to continue to age. Love old people. Family history. That's the other thing. We have zero control over that. If you have Alzheimer's disease in your family, you are at a higher risk for developing it than if you're sitting next to someone who has no history. But it does not at all mean that you are going to get Alzheimer's disease. If you have a parent or brother or sister, your risk goes up a little bit percentage-wise. If you have a parent who has younger onset, 40s, 50s, early 60s, that's where you tend to find individuals who have genes that will determine a strong correlation of later developing Alzheimer's disease. But again, I've heard a physician talk about this, that all of us are at least at a 10% risk. If you have a family member, like a grandparent or something, that brings you up to 20%. There is a way to do genetic testing now, but the only genes they've been able to determine where you could look at it, find out that you have it, and go, yes, you will get Alzheimer's disease, make up less than 5% of all the Alzheimer's that's out there. So we don't really push for genetic testing, one, because of that reason. It's a really small percentage, tiny percentage really, that would show, yes, you have these two genes that typically occur in families, again, like the one we were working with where mom is 41. That would be a family that really we would want to see if they would be included in some research studies, because they would want to look at that type of thing. So genetics do play a role, but they don't automatically determine that you're going to get Alzheimer's disease. There is really no way to be able to say yes you will or no you won't, other than that small percentage, and it's called familial Alzheimer's. Head injury. Individuals who have head injury have now been found to later have a very strong link to later developing Alzheimer's disease, which is why there are studies, there are things that come out, particularly in sports and football players, and so while the one thing we do have control over that is, if you are a motorcycle rider, wear a helmet. If you're in a car, wear a seatbelt. Those types of things where you can't prevent Alzheimer's disease, but we could help prevent head injury in some instances. People ask, well, what can I do? Well, there is a strong connection between our heart and our brain. So now we know that what's good for your heart is good for your brain. blood gets pumped, I don't even know what the percentage is, all the time up into our brain, and you know that factory's working. Well, if something's not working, that also has a significant effect on the brain. So research is being done on the connection between your heart and your brain, and how individuals have a higher prevalence of Alzheimer's disease if you have heart disease. Hispanics and African Americans are at a higher percentage of having stroke, diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure. All of those things have been linked with a higher incidence of Alzheimer's disease, particularly paying attention to diabetes and its link. So therefore, I don't want to say the statistics wrong, but Hispanics are at a higher, have a higher incidence of Alzheimer's disease, and African Americans even higher than that, based upon other health conditions that are happening. General healthy aging, we get asked all the time. What about food? What about the environment? There are research studies that show, now let me be clear, there's no way to prevent. We know that anybody can get Alzheimer's disease. We are all at risk. When President Reagan announced that he had the disease, that changed significantly the landscape of opening up really the public's knowledge and information that, holy cow, it doesn't matter who you are, what your educational level is, your income, ooh, I really have to hurry, all of those kind of things, anybody can develop it. We have plenty of families who say, you know, I just can't hardly stand this. She was the smartest, healthiest, et cetera, and she now has Alzheimer's disease. But on the flip side of that, they also have done studies, and one was released last fall, that although isolation, someone who's in total isolation, that doesn't cause Alzheimer's disease, but they have a higher prevalence of developing Alzheimer's disease. That staying connected, using your brain is very, very good at keeping a healthy brain. Staying connected, getting out of the house, eating foods that are healthy for your heart, therefore healthy for your brain. Doing those kind of things are all very positive. Let me skip forward. Okay, just really quick, to get a diagnosis, this is not a disease, unfortunately, where you can go into a doctor and get a blood test or some sort of one thing. It's not. We need that desperately, because it is very hard to get a diagnosis. I haven't been able to get a diagnosis with my mom, and I'm in this. I'm surrounded by great doctors and information and knowledge and resources and all that kind of thing. But it's still very difficult to get a diagnosis. So it's tough, particularly for younger individuals. Again, I think of a woman who's 41. Sometimes they can go years and years and years without getting a diagnosis and bouncing around between doctors, because it's not even something that you think about in an individual that young. So they'll look at medical history. They'll do mental status evaluations. There are a lot of cognitive tests now. I can remember, and again, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a doctor, but I used to do many mental status exams on the residents who lived in the assisted living where I worked. There's a lot more now, more than just an MMSE, thankfully. They'll look at visual motor coordination. They will test language skills. They'll do a physical examination to find out, has a stroke occurred or many strokes in the brain. They can do a psychiatric evaluation to assess mood and other emotional factors, again, looking at depression. And then interviews with the family. It is significant the amount of people who will send their loved one to a doctor's appointment and they'll come back, everything's fine. And the doctor will say everything's fine. And as you'll learn as our day progresses, what's something that is a long-term memory that we learn pretty much from the get-go? Social skills. Hi, how are you? Good, good, how are you? The weather sure is hot, isn't it? You can go back and forth like that, and you wouldn't know that I don't have dementia, but you wouldn't know that I don't have have dementia. Because we can go back and forth. Or are you feeling okay? I'm feeling fine. You know, it's my family. They're crazy. They have insisted that I come to the doctor, but there's nothing wrong with me. So, what the point of that is, in trying to find out what is possibly causing dementia symptoms, it's really important to talk with family members because, case in point, my mom absolutely still believes that she should be able to drive and do everything else. And she cannot safely do that anymore. That's a significant part of this, that they don't know that they don't know. They don't know that they don't know. What do you mean? So it's really important to get to, have families interviewed as well. Okay, I have 2 minutes. I'm skipping super fast. There are medications that are approved for Alzheimer's disease. Here's the thing. They're not a treatment that stops it. It doesn't keep it from progressing. Can they help? Absolutely. They're FDA approved because enough people had significant enough improved symptoms, but it doesn't mean that it's halting Alzheimer's disease. Another great story I heard from a doctor really quick. If you have a bad knee, which I do, so I've had shots, well that means I can get through the day better, or if you rub some of that stuff on it, that means I can get through the day better, but did those things actually correct what's wrong in my knee? No. Same thing with Memantine, Aricept, Exelon. They are medications that help, can very significantly help you get through the day, but they're not actually solving the problem of what's happening with Alzheimer's disease. They can help, for sure. Okay. And then, last but not least, we'll do this over lunch. I'll just tell you more about the association, myself or Maxine, and the support services that we have. Before I jump off, I wholeheartedly also want to thank everyone for being here today. Thanks for spending your time. Thanks for our sponsors who have helped. There's no way we could do this without you. There's no way we could do this without local volunteers. Just cannot thank you enough. Thank you, Maxine, for all of your work. I am very, very privileged to be able to get to work with Maxine every day, and she's worked so much on this. Thanks to all the volunteers, and I think, unless anyone has a significant question, I think I will wrap up. So, any questions I can answer? Again, non-medical, but no. Okay. Thank you all, and we'll see who's up next. Appreciate it.